administrations have, gained.
What brings you to visit Korea in fact?
The first time ever trilateral dialogue between India, Korea, and the United States. So this is a new idea that has come up in the Biden administration years, where it is talking about India, US, South Korea technological cooperation in new technologies.
You recall late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
But last time you had the establishment or the so-called deep state, people like John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, actually preventing such a deal from coming through. But this time the team will have to be far more differential to Trump. So Trump is now more experienced. He's not going to simply just accept whatever his advisors tell him. So that is one big change. But I think my own instinct is he will try and look for an opening. Whether that will come through or not is not very clear.
South Korea as well, vis-a-vis Russia, vis-a-vis other countries.
So then that brings us to the question of what kind of a peace settlement. That's where when you say territory for peace, then the whole set of issues relating to can Ukrainians sacrifice territory, will Russia be accepted, then the relationship between Ukraine and NATO, security guarantees, all these issues will come up.
Going to the moon, so therefore what are the rules under which countries can operate? So
India's had a relationship with Russia for a long time, and that relationship came about at a time when the Western countries were not willing to sell arms to India. They were closer to Pakistan. Today the situation is very different. So what India is saying is that, look, it wants to keep the Russia relationship because of the uncertain dynamic with China. And therefore, India wants to retain a relationship with Russia so that you can construct a reasonable security framework within Asia.
With Asia becomes a priority. And reinforcing.
When peace comes back and the Americans take a look at this picture differently, I think there will be a lot more room for East Asia to work closely with Russia. But I think you have a better position than Japan, because Japan has a territorial dispute with Russia, so that makes it harder. But I think a South Korea that in the post-Ukraine situation, I think you'll have a lot more.
And he's always felt you could do it.
For example, the Philippines has been at the receiving end of Chinese assertiveness, but the ASEAN as a collective cannot really help them. And I think that's where the question of alternative institutions, not to replace ASEAN, because ASEAN has a value, but somebody must do things that ASEAN does not do. That's where I think the US has set up the quadrilateral forum, the AUKUS, and the trilateral with Japan and South Korea, as well as the so-called Quad with Philippines. So I think these are new institutions that are being created. And my sense is these institutions are going to be here to stay, while ASEAN will survive as a central part of the Asian security architecture.
We will have to be far more differential to Trump. So Trump is now more experienced.
But I think South Korea is such an important player today in Asia, in the world, that I think it's in the interest of the Quad to find a mechanism to work with South Korea, either as a full member or through ad hoc arrangements that can be developed in the coming years, so that having South Korea on the side of the Quad
to keep the Russia relationship because of the uncertain.
You remember 4 or 5 years ago, in the last year of Trump, there was actually a proposal to bring in South Korea, Australia, and India into the G7, but a lot of the European countries were not ready for it. So I think that's where the problem was, and then that idea seemed to have passed. But now I think if Trump comes back, hopefully that idea, at that time it was called the D10, the Democracy 10. I think it's a good idea, because what you have is really today the European economies are declining relative to Asia. For example, today, India has overtaken Britain, it's overtaken France, it's almost double the size of Canada. So therefore, I think the old distribution of power no longer exists. Why not G20? But G20 itself, given the presence of China and Russia, has complicated things. So I would strongly support the entry of an expanded G7 that can actually play a more credible role in the international system, better than the G7 and better than G20.
It's in our interest to make that relationship very close.
And I think the US establishment knows if Taiwan falls, sustaining American presence in Asia will become very, 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 very hard. So therefore, I think whatever the current statements are, I think the US commitment to Taiwan is central to its ability to be a player in Asia. So I see that continuing in its essence.
In the post-Ukraine situation.
Look, I think this is the speculation everywhere. Because if there is a war between US and China on Taiwan, the US allies, their role, how that will play out, all these are going to be important issues. But I think what has changed in the last 5 years, I would say, is China's confidence that it can prevail in a conflict. That has come down. See, unlike Putin, who went into Ukraine, so even if it got one slice of Ukraine, he can say, look, declare victory. But Xi Jinping can't go into Taiwan and claim a draw because he can't start a war that he can afford to lose, or he can't get a full victory. Therefore, I think the constraints on China have significantly increased. Then Chinese economy is slowed down. So I would say the temptations for China, I think, would be less rather than more at this point of time. Meanwhile, US economy is doing very, very well. So the US ability to mobilize the global system against China has increased. So I would say any reasonable calculation from China would want to avoid a conflict on Taiwan, but at the same time keep rattling the cage, keep mounting pressure on Taiwan, and use it as a negotiating thing with the Americans, and also try to influence Taiwan's domestic politics.
And that relationship came about at a time when
North Korea's own positions have evolved on unification, on a range of issues. They've taken a much harder line. So therefore, constructing any settlement, a reasonable settlement of total elimination of Korean nuclear weapons does not seem likely. So I think the incentives for South Korea to make nuclear weapons will continue to grow. And in fact, there is a section of Republican Party that says, look, the US should encourage friendly proliferation by its friends and partners, or give them more capabilities.
And the Biden administration, or the Democrats in general?
No, that's up to the South Koreans to decide. But I see that if North Korea has it and you can't take it away, what is the answer? Either you make peace on terms that Kim Jong-un wants, which few people are willing to buy, or you negotiate a peace deal, which is what they effort, right? What is the peace deal that you tried? That nuclear weapons will be eliminated, there will be reasonable guarantees for both sides, and there will be friendly commerce between North and South. But that's not just worked.
For Europe. So that fact remains. But it's not.
No, I don't see this. Domino is always a fear-mongering theory that look over the last, since the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty came in 1968, only 4 countries have acquired nuclear weapons, which is North Korea, Israel, Pakistan, and India. So there's been no falling of dominoes.
What might offer will be acceptable to Putin.
Nuclear peace, American presence, then the nature of the relationship between North and South, the nature of the political regime in the North, all these issues are part of that larger package. But you just can't take out one. I don't think Trump, for all his rhetoric, will simply say, look, tomorrow I'm going to walk away.